it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out. Hey, it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. And today we have two guests, kind of. It's me with my dad, who is co-hosting today, and we have ultra marathoner Bryan Ellis with us today. Hey, Bryan, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Oh, and hi, Dad. How are you?
Hey, Tori.
So Bryan, I know I said ultra marathoner, but I also know there are probably so many other things about you too. Can you give everybody just like a little intro into who you are today?
Yeah. So a little bit about me. I guess I'm a full-time marketer, part-time runner. I also spend a lot of time writing about running, the science behind it, the mental health aspects, and just well-being aspects that go along with not only running, but being active and living an outdoor life. I think one thing that makes me a little unique is I wasn't a high school runner. I wasn't a college runner. I know a lot of my friends were, but I found running later in life, and that's when it really kind of developed into a passion, and I started seeing the benefits of it, and it really opened my eyes that it's for everybody. You didn't have to come from a sports background. You don't have to be a guy that runs, a guy or girl that runs, 5.5 minute miles. You can come into something and you can take it at your own speed, and the payoffs and what you get out of it is just incredible.
Yeah. And I think I say this probably every time I'm like a broken record. I love hearing about people who found running later in life because both me and my dad kind of were runners forever. So it's just so interesting, like how people come to all of that. So can you kind of give us a little more detail into like, how you found fitness and then how that turned into running, and then now you're, ultra running is kind of a whole different beast too in the running world. So kind of how you made that path.
Yeah, my fitness journey was, like I said, it was a little different compared to a lot of runners. I started out in more of kind of like a lifting background, a traditional gym background, bro lifting, I'd call it. And when I moved to Costa Rica for several years, just seeking kind of a little reprieve from, I was living in Los Angeles in the heart of the city for a long time. It just got a bit overwhelming. So I decided to take a little break. I moved down to Costa Rica for a while, and I was looking for ways to meet new people and to kind of step outside my comfort zone. And I ended up finding they had a CrossFit class there. I call it CrossFit Light because at that point we didn't even have like bench racks or anything. If you wanted weight on your shoulders, you had to have people help it up on your back, or you're doing it off of plyo boxes. So but it was great, and it was a great way to start meeting people. So I really found my joy and just kind of and just being around people and doing the fitness thing there. So that led me to wanting to get better at that. So I started running in the hills, running the mountains, just short distances, 2, 3, 4 miles. But I found that I really loved it. I loved getting out and kind of being by myself and just experiencing nature and everything around me. Then when I moved back to the US, I ended up moving to the Atlanta area for work. I'm just north of Atlanta here in Marietta, Georgia. And so I started here. I decided to pick up it was a great way to meet people. So I jumped into one of the local CrossFit gyms here, and I met a couple people, and we decided to go do some of the Spartan races. So, mud run style, obstacles with trail running involved. And I found out that I was actually really good at it. So I started just doing the harder courses. I started jumping in. One of the really well-known ones is the Killington Ultra Beast up in Killington, Vermont, which is just an absolute monster. It's 30 miles. I think it's 12,000 feet of gain, but with 60 plus obstacles thrown in there, swim sections, etc. So I started doing that, and I've ended up doing World's Toughest Mudder when it came to Atlanta, and I ended up placing top 25, which qualified me to run at the pro level for Spartan, which was really cool. That took me to I got to go run at the World Championship in Australia, just outside of Sydney, and I placed top 10 in the world. So that really kind of opened my perspective into running just long distances. So those are 24-hour events. So, it's a 5, 6 mile lap race. You just do over and over and over again with a ton of obstacles. But I found that I loved it, and it was just the challenge and wanting to go farther. So from there, I realized I was like, I had the upper body strength, I had the obstacles down, but I needed to get my legs better. So I needed to run more. So this was about, I think I was 35 at the time. So again, I kind of found it later in life, but that really opened up to, it was like, okay, if I want to be better at this, I need to start running a lot more. And so I started looking into the local ultra marathon scene, starting to look at, I ran my first, I think, half marathon shortly after that with, no obstacles, just straight run. And I fell in love. I jumped into the 50K, and that's when I really kind of started meeting a bunch of the other ultra runners and got into the scene, where I realized that this is just a bunch of really cool people that like to hang out, kind of like party and just go run long distances out in the woods. So that really attracted me. From there, I've run since then, I've probably run 20 plus 50Ks. And last year I jumped into the 100-mile range. I ran my first 100 miler, which was the Run Rabbit Run 100 out in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. It's a really well-known race. A lot of big runners go out there. And so I did that one with a buddy, which was a great experience. So we did that together. Actually, we stuck together the whole time, which presented unique challenges that I think a lot of people aren't familiar with when you're trying to do that kind of a distance. And then I just realized that not at one point in the race was I like, I've reached my limit. So I decided to just keep pushing. I ran what's considered the hardest 100 mile on the East Coast early this year, and I'm running another one here in about 2 weeks. So I just kind of right at this point am just kind of keep pushing and want to keep going farther and trying to see where that breaking point is. I haven't found it yet, so we'll see where it comes.
I mean, I hope you don't find it, but such is life, right? Wow, I feel like I had like 100 questions throughout your whole explanation, but I don't want to keep jumping all over the place. What does your training look like right now, since you are, well, maybe what did your training look like a couple weeks ago? Because I imagine you're probably reducing mileage now as you're getting closer to your race, or do you not taper like that?
Yeah,
Or
I definitely taper. So we're actually 3 weeks out this weekend. So this weekend we had our big long run last weekend. We went up and previewed the course. I feel like that's always a great thing. Luckily, this is the first 100 mile I've done that's really close to home. It's only about an hour and a half away. So we're able to go up and actually, get our feet on trail and see what we're going to be in for, which I think gives a lot of perspective, and it's mentally really, really takes a lot off your plate. But as far as training wise, I'm a big believer of building my miles up while also keeping my strength training as a priority. So mileage wise for 100, I'm going to look to build at my peak week 4, week 3, up to probably about 65, 70 miles. And that's also going to be incorporating still a lot of strength training. So I'm a big firm believer in walking lunges, which is something that I've started to incorporate. I started incorporating when I was doing the 24-hour obstacle course races. And so now I'm up to the point where I build up to sets of 2,000 straight walking lunges. And I found that it absolutely just builds monster legs. I've not reached a point where my legs now actually give out. I've had, the skin on my feet give out. I've had other things like that. But as far as legs wise, I haven't reached it. I really like races too with big vert. So again, I think that also comes into play. So yeah, so training wise, I'm going to build up to about that 65, 70 mile mark. And then my taper, I'll start cutting back 25% about every week. And I'll also keep that up with the strength. So when it comes to walking lunges, Bulgarian split squats, keeping my heavy deadlifts, I'll start kind of tapering those down. And then I'll have my last lifting sessions and my last kind of serious runs. I like to keep it. So this 100 miler starts on a Friday. So I'll still do a decent workout on the Monday before, just so I don't, lose anything. I know a lot of people like to take that full week and just kind of, they'll baby it, they keep it on, but I like to make sure that I'm not going to lose any of that fire. And then I'll do maybe some 5Ks leading up to it. But that's really what it looks like as far as training wise.
wow,
Wow, that's incredible.
oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, Tor. Yeah, so that's incredible. Are you going straight through on these 100 milers? Are you taking moments to take a an hour nap? Like, what's the
So,
strategy during the race?
So my strategy is I've never had a problem with lack of sleep, so I go straight through. That said, I'm not as fast as the faster guys. I know a lot of runners, like my crew, they always kind of give me the insights of what's going on. They're like, we'll see these people fly in and then they stop and they're getting pampered for an hour, like you're saying, and then they go off and they're running. Me, I don't like sitting down. I'll get there, I'll maybe sit down, make sure my feet are okay, get my nutrition on, make sure we're in the South, and so the last 100 I did, we were facing 90-degree weather and 80-90% humidity. At night we had 100% humidity, so it was really important to stay on top of hydration. So make sure I either chug like a liquid IV, something like that, just get it in my system, and then really just hit the road. So maybe a couple minutes in each aid station before I'm headed back out. I find too that if I am going to have any like leg cramping issues, it'll be when I sit down for too long. So as long as I keep them going, it's just like, an object in motion stays in motion. So
Now, I saw you pull the GoPro out regularly, I guess. I saw your video for the Hellbender 100, which was
yep.
outstanding, by the way. It was a great video. Give you great perspective on how difficult the terrain can be. Do you do that for all your races? Do you pull those, the GoPro out like every, 30
Yep.
minutes just to give a perspective?
Yep, I really do. I like filming the courses. I do it for two reasons. First and foremost, like I like to be able to look back on it and remember it because I'll film this stuff, and a lot of times you get to the finish and you forget about all these little things that happened along the way and just all the like the minor details, some of the train. It can be such a long day out there. You're talking, 30 plus hours in a lot of cases that there's just so much to take in, you tend to forget it. So when I get to go back and look through the video, it just gives me a whole nother perspective for what I've done and the beauty of the course. I get to see things that I might not have noticed when I've initially done it. And then the second reason is I like to have it so other people can see it. I always take pride on trying to film the most difficult parts of the course because I typically, leading up to a race, I love watching videos and trying to see what I'm in for. But I always find people like when they hit into that pain cave, all of a sudden the video stops recording and you don't get to see those parts of the course that are most challenging. So I really try to make an effort of like when I'm in pain, let's pull out the camera and look at what and see what's causing me pain. And it's done some I've got some great experiences on that. So like the first 100 I did it with my good friend who was the pacer at for the Hellbender. And there's like an experience in where the first climb when you start the Run Rabbit Run is just up a Black Diamond ski slope. It's 4,000 feet, just straight up. You get in this conga line, and it's misery. But as we look out to our right, just as we're about 2/3 of the way up, there's like a juvenile bear just barreling at the line of people, and so it's like, pull the camera out. And so I'm so glad having like little things like that to just look back on and think, wow, that was really cool because when we were done with it, we both were like, did that really happen? So so
Yeah.
it adds a bit to it.
Yeah, I will say, like watching the end of the Hellbender 100, you almost made it look like it was fun. Like you were finishing strong. I'm like, it can't be that easy. It's not easy. I know it's not easy.
Oh
So
yeah. Well, the one thing I didn't get on video and I wish I would have was how my feet actually looked. So the weather was so hot and humid. I ended up starting, a bunch of runners had the same issue. I ended up pretty much developing trench foot. So we literally had to duct tape my feet together. I mean, not just a little on the toes. I was wearing duct tape boots
yeah.
pulling in there. So my legs felt amazing, but every step was just like stepping on fire.
Is that your kryptonite? Like every runner seems like they've got some limiting factor, whether it's their VO2 max, whether it's their leg strength. Is foot seem to be your recurring issue, or what's do you have one?
No, yeah, so no, my feet, this is actually the first time it really happened, and we've just been in the southeast here. We're just having a brutally hot and humid summer, and so it's come up quite a bit. That was actually, I wasn't expecting that, and so that was after the first 100, my feet were really good, and my legs hurt. So that's when I was like, okay, I really got to focus in on mileage, the proper buildup, proper taper, and leg strength for big vert. The Hellbender has almost 24,000 feet of elevation gain, and there's something like 17,000 feet in the first 45 miles. So it is just up and down. The climbs, it's 3,000 foot climbs and descents. And that's where I think my feet really kind of were getting eat up, was those massive descents. You can't slow yourself, really technical terrain. So you could just feel the pads getting hotter and hotter, and there's just no ventilation in those shoes a lot of the time. So if I'd done it again, in this race, especially if the humidity's high, I know I always like to change socks and shoes at some point in the race, but I would have done it more. I would have rotated them more often. And I think that would have helped a lot. And I wasn't the only person at that race. Like I said, when I got across the finish line, I saw other people taking their shoes off and their feet looked just like mine. I was like, ooh. So
Hey, you mentioned the pain cave a couple seconds ago. Do you have like a why? Like, what is your why that you go to when you're sort of deep in that pain cave to keep going? Do you have one? Like most of the ultra runners I hear like have something in the past that they sort of gravitate to mentally.
So for me, I really think it comes down to, it's kind of a saying in the ultra running community. It's the farther you go, the more you change. To me, it's really about trying to find myself and find my limits. There's just something in it when you reach a spot that is where you know you could stop, and the easiest thing would be to do is stop, but the truth is you've got more in you. At that point, you're literally only probably giving about 40-50% of what you have in you, and so you can keep going, keep pushing. To me, it is a quest to kind of figure out where that limit is and how far I can go. I think it relates a lot to those experiences, and pushing through the pain cave relates a lot to just life in general. Every day we face adversity, whether it's your job, family, just, driving and dealing with traffic. And it's how much of this can you take? And can you push on through it? And I really do think that that's one of the greatest lessons ultra running can teach people, is that we're capable of so much more than we ever realized, both physically and mentally. A lot of people will end up quitting races or, tapping out. And the realization is most of them aren't getting it taken away in an ambulance. It's just because mentally they're done. And so that pushing past that blockade and that mental point can teach you a lot about yourself, and just teach you a lot about what you're capable of in any aspect of life.
Yeah, you sound very similar to David Goggins. I know you're probably familiar with him.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he got that 40% limit, theory as well. That that it's hard. Your mind is screaming to stop, stop, stop.
It's
Even though you're right, your body can keep going. You're not going away in an ambulance, but I don't know if I want to get to that point. I mean, I've had a few.
Exactly. It's
Yeah,
easy to stop. It is. I think anybody that does a lot of miles has definitely heard of David Goggins, and knows his mantras. I'm a little more tame in my
yeah,
perspective than him. I'm not trying to take souls or anything out
yeah.
there. In fact, I think it's about, one of the things I love most about the ultra running community is how encouraging it is, and how uplifting it actually is, and how, when you're either A, passing people, or B, getting past, just, how are you doing? You feeling good? You're looking great. Keep it going. I've had times in races where you'll find someone on the side of the road or side of the trail just down, and you stop and you try to help them. Hey, I've got electrolytes. I've got fuel. What do you need? Oh no, my legs aren't working right now. I need a minute, And so, that sense of community to me is one of the reasons I really enjoy it. So.
That's amazing.
Oh,
Yeah, Tor, I'll let you go in a second. But it was I'm trying to create my own nickname of Baby Goggins. Like you said, I'm not as intense as that.
Exactly.
I just want to be a baby version of him.
There's a diet there. I don't know if you're a Goggins fan, you probably know Cam Haynes too. I think
Oh
he's a
yeah,
great one to follow. We actually got a chance, buddy. We flew out to Oregon and he had a 10K he put on outside of Eugene with a mountain ops that we got to run and meet him. And he's a really down to earth, a really cool guy. So,
he's a bow hunter, right? He does
yep,
all this for bow hunting benefits, I guess.
yep, yep. And he's really gotten into like the ultra 100-mile scene because of it. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
literally,
actually, I read his book first, and then and then Goggins afterwards. But yeah, they're very similar from an intensity standpoint.
yep, yep.
Switching a little bit from all the fangirling over here about Goggins, Dad. But so you mentioned community, and I think also you when you started talking about your running story, you talked about community, because CrossFit also is another place that kind of has a community, and it's easy to find them once you're there. And running is the same thing. It's another one of those broken record things I'm always saying is like, you know, runners, we love community, we love doing things together, and that's like such a great part about running. And I think as positive as the in-person community can be, and the, you know, not so in-person community can be, social media is a big thing now with running. Whether it's like running motivation groups who are always, you know, looking for different people to post, you know, their distances and all those stuff, or Strava, I know is huge. I don't really use Strava too much because I can't keep up with any social media. So it's just like an extra one I just can't even do. But I imagine people probably want to see you on Strava because you are doing all these cool things. Can you talk a little bit about like the social media aspect of all those big distances that you're doing?
Yeah. So I've definitely had that, the pressure to post a lot and to kind of keep up with the Joneses on Strava. So one thing I don't think I mentioned in my bio is I have a website called runbryanrun.com that's actually grown to be really popular. I'm ecstatic about the growth and never thought it would get to the point it has, but it's allowed me to a lot of different opportunities, A, to meet a ton of people, and B, to work with a lot of great brands. But you know, in the process of working with these brands, one of the things they always want is social media. They want you to be posting on Strava and Instagram and all that. And so it's been tough for me because I actually took about, I think, probably 2 years off of Instagram and pretty much all social medias without being on it, just for the mental health benefits involved with it. So one of the reasons I love running is because of the mental health aspect that it brings to it. I think one thing that you mentioned is, you know, the community behind it. They actually just had a study come out that talks about how group fitness is one of the most, I quote it exactly, but it leads to one of the happiest life satisfactions you can find is being physically active in groups with other like-minded individuals. And I think that's a huge thing. So yeah, when it relates back to Strava, like I tend to, for a while there, I was blocking my account and I just wasn't posting on there. I think it's funny. I think one of the greatest ultra runner of our time right now, or one of, by far the most female, Courtney Dowalter, she's infamous. Her account's on private and she doesn't share her workouts. She doesn't let anybody know what she's doing. So I've kind of took a kind of model from that where I'm like, okay, maybe it is good for mental health to just step back and just do what you're doing. But at the same time, yeah, I do have a group of friends that we stay pretty on each other, because that was the turn on it though, that I thought was like, okay, if I step outside myself and like just get past the mental part where I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter what people think. I know I'm slower than a lot of people, but I also know I'm putting a lot more work than a lot of people. So if I step back that and I start using it for accountability, it could be a great tool to actually help me get to the next level. So that's one of the things I really look at it now, is less of a competition, less comparing to anybody else, but using Strava, you know, you can even use Instagram, stuff like that. As long as you're following the right people and you're using it for the right mindset, it can be incredibly helpful. So me and a core group of friends, we've really used it as just kind of a launching point to stay on top of each other. Like, hey, you know, you didn't get your long run in this weekend, or hey, I haven't seen you post in a couple weeks. Are you feeling okay? Just doing a check-in to make sure you're all right. So stuff like that. So for me, yeah, I think it's a mixed bag, but if you come at it from the right perspective, it can be a valuable tool. You just have to know what you're using it for, rather than, again, just trying to keep up with everybody, because there's so much inflated ego on any of those apps and social media platforms that it can be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
by the way, yeah,
hard.
your website, I went through it last night and this morning. I think it's terrific. I wish I had seen it before because it's got great information. I love the setup of it from the standpoint of it's got, you know, running, hiking, OCR, but also like training information. And, you know, as a runner, like I see, you know, Arthur Lydiard in there sort of mentioned his whole training technique.
Yeah.
So it's got great information. So it's more of a great resource for whether it be motivation or information or product comparison, versus, you know, a lot of the social media is just, hey, look at me, look at what I've done in this world. And so that's great, but it doesn't give me any sort of information or, you know, product comparisons. And I like the product this versus this, and your comparisons that you do, not just a simple review of one product. It's sort of a comparing and contrasting two products. So that's good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and you have another website too, which is what Wolf Life Running. Is that the one?
So that's our yeah, that's kind of our group, our YouTube channel that
Okay.
where our we we've started filming our group runs. There's some solo ones on there, but it's primarily when me and my buddies get out on trails and try to do stuff. So that's where a lot of some of the content from the website comes into play too. I like to do like what you call like kind of adventure runs. So the world of ultras led me into when COVID hit. I planned on doing my first 100 back in 2021, and the idea was I was kind of about to step up my level, do my first 100, and then a week out, we had my whole crew booked. We were all flying out to Colorado for it, and then COVID. So they canceled the race. And but we were already had tickets out to Colorado, and we figured, hey, let's just go see a bunch of trail and go see what we can do. And what was just so shocking was all that training I put in just made it so that you could just go for miles. You could just go see all these beautiful places. You could get farther beyond where the tourists were, and you could just you could get lost in nature, and just experience the beauty of what this world has to offer. And so that really opened my eyes to doing more like some of these adventure runs and traveling to go do long trails, doing things like the rim to rim to rim, is one that I think that any runner that even doing the rim to rim where you run across the Grand Canyon once is amazing. But if you do that, the out and back of it is just, it's awesome. Things like doing the Teton Crest Trail, Presidential Traverse. I said we just got back from Oregon. We spent 3 days there, and I think we we racked up like 70, 80 miles. Our first day we did 3 or 4 trail run hikes. The next day we climbed Broken Top Mountain, which is like a class 3-4 scramble straight up a mountain overlooking Three Sisters Wilderness. And then we ran a 10K the next day. And so it was just like, it's just a blast when you realize that you build up this endurance that you can go do and see so much, because we live in a beautiful world, and just having the ability to go see these places that most people will never have a chance to experience is so cool to me.
Yeah, you've also gone global too. I saw you, Italy. There's some videos from that. There's stuff from Iceland. I
Yeah.
think you have in there as well.
Yeah, so that channel we've only been doing it for about 3 years. I'm a big world traveler, so we've done a lot. I've got a chance to go. Yeah, so we went to Iceland last year. I think we drove in 1 week, 6 days. We drove over 2,000 miles and ran over 100 miles just hitting trails and just seeing everything we could and filming everything we could. So yeah, we just got back from Italy, which was kind of a run slash. I did a bunch of adventure running out there, but also ended up just kind of relaxing for part of it too. So just doing anything that was cool, but getting to run through, cities like Florence, running through Rome. It was a great experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, and one last transition back to you, T, was you mentioned mental health, and you moved from LA to Costa Rica, sort of trying to change your life a bit. I guess any advice for sort of younger people who are struggling with mental health? You know, if you're depressed, and it's hard to then have the motivation to go out and do a 10K, right? So I guess maybe what helped you from a mental health standpoint, just make that next step to go out and do something versus just staying at home and closing your door.
Yeah, it can be really hard. And that's actually one of the reasons I left Los Angeles was a mental health standpoint. I didn't really fully understand it at the time. I just felt like I needed a break. But I realized as soon as I got away from the city and just the kind of mindset that a lot of people that were in there, I worked in the music industry for a long time. And just the the materialistic one up, try to be better. It's all about money mindset really was eating at me, and I didn't fully understand it until I got away from it and realized that there was another way of life, and that living simpler or more simple and just enjoying the day to day could be so rewarding. So when I had left, that was one of the first things I started doing was trying to get out and experience new things. And so for people that are, battling that, a lot of it just starts with one step. That first step is so important, and it's that first step walking out the door. You don't have to run 100 miles. You just have to start moving a little bit. Movement is so key to our human nature and how we feel. It's connected to us. It's in our inner being. We're meant to move. Humans are the greatest endurance species on Earth. There are a lot of animals that are faster than us, but we are over long distances. Humans are the number one endurance athletes or species. That's how we used to catch animals. We chase them till they got tired. And so hunts could last days or weeks. And then you start looking at all the studies that go along with mental health and physical activity. And there have been a lot of things comparing, recent studies have showed run therapy to be just as effective as antidepressants on individuals, and almost at the same correlation of percentage of effectiveness. And these studies aren't new. There's a study in, I think, 2000 where they compared Zoloft compared to just walking, intense walking or up tempo walking. And they found again the exact same thing, that it was actually just as effective as an antidepressant pill and even more effective long term. So these things are important to know and realize that, a lot of people are really about the quick fix, but long term, the quick fix isn't always the right answer. Obviously, there are times when it's needed, but I think for a lot of people, just knowing that getting out, moving, getting some sunlight, feeling the outdoors, and then going for hikes, and just going at your own pace and trying to relax and breathe and feel the world around you. It can do wonders. A lot of young people nowadays, it brings back to social media. They're just trying to keep up with everybody, and it can be overwhelming. I can't imagine being in high school nowadays with having all that comparison, and so much of it is filtered, faked. A lot of these influencers are taking things and are, they're on testosterone, HGH, and more. And so it's unrealistic for people to keep up with. And so just realizing it starts with you. None of that really matters. It's about building experiences, building friendships, and building memories, because those are what are going to change your whole mindset. And so to me, that's mental health wise. Again, just take that first step out the door, look at the sky, embrace the sun, feel the air. Hell, go hug a tree. I'm serious. There's actually, I forget what it's called, but there's a Japanese, it's like a Japanese therapy. It's called tree therapy, and there's a word for it in Japanese, but it's proven that the spores that trees put off will actually are really good for humans. And so you go out and just be next to green nature will have an impact on you. So
That's great advice.
Yeah, I was gonna say thank you so much for like not only your perspective, but like making it very real, I think. So I think that's the best part of advice is if it's real, relatable, people can kind of grasp onto it and understand it. And I'll have to look up that study on the trees. I really like that. That is very cool.
yeah, I forget. There's some word for it, but it's tree therapy of some sort. And yeah, they actually at like lunchtimes they'll encourage workers to go out and eat lunch just like under trees, out sit in the grass. And they did studies because they've been doing it for a long, long time. And like I said, they found out that the spores that trees put off to actually fight against insects is really good for humans. So it's a very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, I'll have to if I can find some info, I'll have to link it into the episode too so people can read about it. Keeping it a little lighter now as we kind of start to wrap up a little bit. I think I always ask people this, especially our longer distance guests. What are you thinking about when you are running? Because those long, like day long runs, are you listening to music? Are you listening to books? Are you switching back and forth? Are you listening to nothing? What's going on in your head while you're doing all that running?
So sometimes like during a lot of my training runs, I'll have music on just get so repetitive. But in most races, I don't listen to anything. I do a lot of inner soul searching, I think. Like I said, when I get out there, and especially pushing these distances and these challenging courses that you're unfamiliar with, I try to take it all in. I try to soak it all in. So mentally, it ranges from everything from enjoying the moment to embracing the misery to having conversations with myself to solving my life's issues. In some cases it's almost like a therapy, I'd say. There are times where I find myself in almost a meditative state where, you know, like when it gets really hard and you start to think that like, okay, I could stop. But you start to really kind of zone in and feel and embrace that feeling a bit. And you can start to have some clarity on a level that I think that, again, it's one of the reasons I think distance runners push themselves as far as they do. You start to really understand a bit about what in you need to work on to be better, and how important this life, this ability to move is. And it may sound cliche, but those things will start to echo with you. As far as that, then you start to get to the parts of night where it's dark. And even when you're running with someone, you know, I call it caterpillaring out, where people start to kind of spread and distance. And even if you're with them, they can be 100 yards behind you and you feel like you're in the pitch black alone. And I mean, I've had conversations with people that have passed in my life. I mean, I know they're, you know, make believing in my head, but it allows you to just process things in a different way. So it's such a wide variety of emotions. I mean, I know people that cry out there. I know you'll hear people just having, you know, talking to themselves in the woods because they're just in it, and you feel so vulnerable as things just start to come out. But I think a lot of people need that and could actually use that experience of feeling vulnerable and embracing it and just going with it.
Yeah. That's interesting that you don't. So do you train without music sometimes too, just so that your head's like okay to not be listening to
Thank
stuff, or
you
just like,
for
I'm already
tuning
kind of there,
in. Make
so
sure
you're
you
doing
rate,
that?
review,
No,
subscribe,
I
all the
typically
things you
I,
can
I
do for
train
a
with music quite a
podcast that
bit.
you
I
enjoy
suffer
listening
from
to.
I have
Make sure you check out
ADHD
social media,
and
our
I have
website,
OCD.
any of those
I
things. If
also
you have
have frank
questions,
anxiety.
comments,
I
interview
have quite the
requests,
bit
feel
going
free to
on, and
email
it's funny.
me
People in the gym
at
always laugh because I have my music on. I'll be
marathonrunclub@gmail.com.
having a conversation. I'll be listening to the music that they have going on. So there's never really a lack of something in my head. So I usually, when I'm training, I use the music to kind of focus me on the training with the purpose mindset. And then when I'm out on the trails, I just let it go free. And I let all that stuff just kind of drive me because, yeah, like I've never really had a problem with that, with being alone or just, you know, not having something going on in there. And so that's one of the things I think from a mental aspect I've learned too, having a brain that just goes crazy a lot of the times, that getting out there and doing this helps tame it quite a bit. So
Yeah. Okay, I'd love to get into that, but I feel like we're gonna run out of time. So we'll just table it for now. But so my dad is running a marathon this weekend. What are you going for? 3:49? Is that, am I right?
No, you got it. 350 is my goal.
3:49.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for him to, because he's so close, I think, right? You're gonna get it, but I know the last one was pretty close, huh?
Yeah, so I need to get to 350 is the Boston qualifying time
Yep.
for my age group. But as you may know, for Boston Marathon, if you hit the qualifying standard and there's more than 30,000 runners, they lower the standard after the fact, and you end up getting bumped out. So my goal is first and foremost get below 4 hours, and then 350 would be nice to qualify, and then less than that to have a better chance of actually being in the Boston race.
it's
Yeah,
so
maybe
hard.
nutrition. Yeah, because maybe the one area that I always seem like I falter on is nutrition. Is there any advice on nutrition?
Yeah, so I was about to say it's so hard from like an ultra running aspect to like convert it over to road running. I feel like they're two really different mindsets. I always tell people I personally think, like, you know, marathon runners are crazy because it's one of those things where you're pushing yourself to the limit, just max the full time, versus ultra running, it's ebbs and flows of, you know, based on the terrain, what it delivers to you. So as far as nutritional aspects, I know for me, I dial it into, I like to take in calories every 30 minutes. I know some people do it differently. I read a few studies, and I've talked to a few really high level marathoners that have that and coaches that talk about taking in. They recommend, I think it's every 10K on for like a road marathon, to start taking in your calories. So it's really less based on time and more based on distance and output. So I think that's one thing a lot of people could learn, is that there's no universal rule to it. You really got to look at how much energy you're expending when you're running, So that's why I think distance is a good thing. Cause I mean, if you're running, you're running a 10K extremely fast, you're going to be burning more. So you're going to need to take food in quicker, versus someone that's going a little slower, may be able to take it differently. I think another thing is, salt intake, electrolyte intake is so important. So not just drinking water. Most of the time they find I forget what study it was, but they talked about how at one of the Boston marathons, they did a study of a bunch of runners afterwards, and they found that a large percent of them were actually overhydrated. And on the opposite end of that spectrum, typically the top performers are typically dehydrated when they finish. So there is this balancing point of not taking in too much water and knowing that it's not just water you do need salts, you do need electrolytes. There's a lot of things you can do, like getting a sweat study will tell you how much salts and what you're actually losing when you sweat. So those are great things when you start getting up to really looking at dialing in your nutritional end, so that you can know exactly what you have to start taking in for your peak performance. But I'm a big fan of like I said, making sure that you're drinking something that has a little bit of substance to it versus just taking in a lot of water.
Perfect. Awesome. I'll use that advice this weekend.
Yeah, don't
Um,
try anything new on race day though. Be
I know.
he's the worst with that. He will. He'll buy like a new like belt. He'll buy new shoes. He'll do new stuff on race day. And I always say, don't do
I
anything new on
know.
race day. It's crazy.
Yeah. I
Um,
never learn.
Never
no.
learn.
Well, Bryan, thank you so much. This has been so fun. Any last things? Because I know there was like so much we could have gotten to, and there's just never enough time to get to everything. But any last things, real quick, you just want to share with everybody? I know we have to check out your website. I'll make sure that's linked in the notes. But anything else?
Um, I think the biggest thing is for me, and I've got a lot of friends on this tip, is really just take on things that scare you. Use that as motivation. Don't be afraid of doing hard races. Don't be afraid of, trying to set a Boston qualifying marathon time because you're afraid of failure. Don't use it as motivation. Take on challenges, push yourself into an uncomfortable zone, because the worst case is you don't finish, or you don't qualify. But what's the hurt? Because guess what, if you didn't try, you were in the same boat in the first place. So you can use those lessons to help yourself grow and take yourself to that next step. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is take on things that scare you, challenge yourself, and reap the rewards, because they will help you grow as a human, as an athlete, and just in everyday life.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And I can't wait to keep following everything that you're doing because it is super inspiring.
Yeah, I've actually, I guess I'll give a shout out. We're taking on, me and my buddy Kyle just signed up for, we're doing the Dragon's Back race out in Wales next September 2024, which is a 6-day event. It covers like 230 something miles, about 60,000 feet of gain. It's 20% of it is off court. It has no trail, where you're climbing mountains and all that. So just kind of an example. It's something that scares me a bit, but I think sign up, buy the ticket, take the ride. So
Oh my gosh. Well, good luck. We'll definitely be checking in to see how that's going for you. Thank you so much.
excellent. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.